Hello, pull up a chair. My name is Earl McKenna, and the sea has given me more stories than it's given me fish. Before we get into today's tale, if you enjoy good prose that smells of salt, I'd ask for that little bit of help. Click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any adventures. Now, let me tell you about the time I didn't just catch a fish, I was caught by one. It was a Tuesday. Tuesdays are usually quiet. The sea respects a man's routine, or so I use. The Sea Hound, my trusty old boat, sliced through the water just off the coast of Maine. The air was that peculiar kind of still you only get in late August, where the humidity hangs on you like a wet wool blanket, and the sky is the color of a faded photograph. There wasn't a ripple. The ocean was a sheet of glass, and I felt like I was the only man left in the world. I like that feeling. It's when you can hear yourself think, or, in my case, hear yourself not think, which is sometimes better. I'd been out since before the sun. The gulls had barely woken up. I had a spot in mind, a little depression in the seabed I'd found years ago, a place where the big halibut liked to think they were invisible. But something made me stop short. Maybe it was the light. It was coming in at a funny angle, making the water look less like water and more like liquid mercury. It looked heavy. I was sipping on some lukewarm coffee from a dented thermos, thinking about a mortgage, or maybe it was my granddaughter's birthday, I don't recall. The point is, my mind was on land. That's always when the sea decides to remind you where you are. I'd baited a heavy line. I wasn't after mackerel. I was after a story. Something to pay the bills and then some. I was using a whole herring, a big one, on a circle hook the size of my hand. I let the line out, feeling the lead weight bump its way down into the dark. Down, down, down it went, deeper than I usually fished. I let it hit the bottom, reeled it up a couple of T, and set the rod in the holder, and I waited. The waiting is the best. It's the before. It's the moment of pure possibility. That line connecting you to the dark is a question mark. You're asking the deep, what have you got for me today? For 3 hours, the deep didn't have much to say. A few lazy tugs from dogfish. I cursed and threw back. The sun started to climb, burning off that morning stillness and bringing a lazy, hot wind. I was about to call it a day, maybe moving shore. I was reaching for the key to start the engine when the rod bent. It didn't just bend. It didn't twitch or bounce. It bent over double with a groan that sounded human. The rod holder, made of solid brass, ripped clean off the gunnel. The whole thing, rod, reel, holder, shot past my head and was about to go into the drink. I'm not as fast as I used to be, but I'm not slow. I grabbed it, I lunged, and caught the rod butt an inch before it vanished forever. The force of it nearly took me with it. It pulled me hard against the stern, knocking the wind out of me. My hands, calloused as they are, burned as I fought to get the rod out of the mangled holder and into the fighting harness. The line wasn't just taut, it was singing. It was vibrating with a low-frequency hum that I felt in my teeth. I've hooked big fish. I've hooked a 900-pound bluefin that took me 8 hours to land. I've hooked sharks that could bite a man in half. This was not that. This was different. There was no panic. There was no thrashing, no desperate run for the deep. It was just weight and power. I braced myself, my boots slipping on the deck. "All right, you beast," I muttered. "Let's see what you are." I tried to gain an inch of line. The drag on my reel, a big Penn Senator I'd had since the 70s, was set heavy enough to stop a truck. The fish didn't seem to notice. I put the reel in low gear and cranked. It was like trying to pull the entire North American continent closer. Nothing. Then the boat moved. I looked at the land, which was a clear, sharp line on the horizon. It was moving, or rather, I was moving, away from. "Well, I'll be damned," I said, to no one but the gulls that were now circling, sensing a struggle. The Sea Hound began to pick up speed. A slow, steady crawl at first, One knot, then two. The line was arrow straight, cutting a clean white V in the water. I wasn't fishing. I was being taken. I checked my PS. We were heading due east, straight out into the Atlantic. I sat down, the rod still bucking in my hands, and just held on. The sheer, colossal thinking power of it, terrifying. It wasn't a panicked run. It was a commute. This thing was going somewhere, and it was taking me and my 40-foot boat with it. I looked at the line spool. I had nearly a mile of heavy braid on that reel. A quarter of it was already gone. "This is a bad idea," I said to the fish. The fish did not respond. It just pulled. The engine was off. The only sound was the zzz of the line being slowly, relentlessly stripped from the reel, and the groan of the fiberglass hull as it was pulled against its will. An hour passed. I looked at the GPS again. We had gone 1 full mile. My arms were burning, not from fighting, but from just holding on. The tension was incredible. I was a dog on a leash, the owner, giant. I thought about cutting the line. It was the smart thing to do. Any sane fisherman would have cut the line. But that's the thing, isn't it? The sea doesn't reward sanity. It rewards stubbornness, and I am one stubborn old man. I had to. What in God's name had I hooked? A whale? Had I snagged a submarine? No. This was alive. I could feel it. I could feel the rhythmic pulse of it, a slow, deep beat that came up the line and into my bones. It felt like a heartbeat, the size of a bass drum. The sun was high now, noon. We passed the 2-mile mark. The land was just a suggestion, a smudge of green and gray. We were in the deep. The water here was blue, not harbor green, but a terrifying, bottomless sapphire blue, the kind of blue that tells you you're very, very small. The line kept peeling. I was losing. I wasn't just losing the fight. I was losing my nerve. This was beyond fishing. This was something ancient. I thought the old story, the ones the old-timers used to tell. Stories of the Leviathan, of the Kraken, of sea serpents that guarded the edge of the world. We laugh at those stories now, sitting in our warm, well-lit bars. We laugh with our GPS and sonar. But let me tell you, when you are 2 miles out and being towed by something you can't see, you stop laughing. I tightened the drag. Stupid, desperate move. The rod screamed. The line stretched so tight I thought it would just from the tension. The fish, it didn't even slow down. It was like I had flicked a flea at its head. 3 miles. My GPS beeped, telling me I'd crossed a waypoint I'd set years ago. The edge, I called it, the place where the shelf drops off into the real abyss. We were 3 miles from shore, and we were still moving. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The boat lurched, throwing me forward. The line went slack. Not completely, but the terrible boat-pulling tension was gone. I stumbled, caught myself, and reeled like a madman. I gained back 20 feet of line, and then it went tight again. But it was a different kind of tight. It wasn't pulling, it was just there. "What now?" I whispered. The silence was absolute. The wind had died. The gulls were gone. It was just me, the blue. I looked over this. I could see the line, a thin white thread going straight down, and then I saw It's hard to explain. At first, I thought it was the seabed, that I had drifted into shallow. But I was in 600 feet of water. It was a shadow, but it was under the boat. It blocked out the sun. It was as big as my boat. No, it was bigger. It was a living, breathing shadow that stretched from my bow to my stern, and then some. I felt a thud. It wasn't a violent hit. It was a nudge, a gentle but unbelievably powerful bump against the hull, right beneath my feet. I grabbed a gaff, my heart hammering against my ribs. Another thud. The boat spun slightly. The line in my hand was still tight, but now it was moving. It was moving up. The thing was surfacing. I backed away all the way to the bow. I didn't want to see it. I really, truly did not want to see what had hooked. I was an old man on a boat, terrified. But it didn't surface. The thudding stopped. Shadow remained. And then the boat started to move again. I looked at my mind couldn't make sense of it. The arrow was moving. But it wasn't moving east. It was moving west. It was pushing me. It was pushing me back to shore. The line was still tight. I held the rod, but I wasn't a fisherman anymore. I was cargo. I was a piece of flotsam being returned. The journey back was silent. The only sound was the water parting at my bow. It was pushing me at a steady 3 knots, faster than it had pulled me. It seemed to be in a hurry. I didn't know what to do. Do you talk to it? Do you pray? I just sat. I sat on my cooler holding a useless fishing rod and let a creature from the bottom of the world push my boat home. It wasn't angry. I didn't feel any malice. I felt deliberation, like a man pushing a stubborn mule out of his yard. It had pulled me out to its territory, to the 3-mile line, and now it's pushing me back. This far, old man, it seemed to say, and no further. What was it? I'll never know. A whale? No whale is that precise. No whale nudges a boat for 3 miles. A giant squid? Maybe. But I'd seen no tentacle, just a shadow that drank the light. I think it was the sea. I think I hooked the sea itself, a piece of its old, deep, dreaming mind, and it had woken up just long enough to tell me to go home. We crossed the 2-mile mark. The watercolor changed sapphire blue back to coastal green. We crossed the 1-mile mark. I could see the houses on the cliffside. The thing, it pushed me all the way back, 3 miles out, 3 miles in. As we reached the exact spot where I'd first hooked it, the place where my day had gone sideways, the sea hound suddenly stopped. The pressure on the bow was gone. The boat rocked in the swell. I stood up, my legs shaking. I looked at the line. It was slack. I reeled it in. It took me 10 minutes. The line came up easily, no weight at all. The big lead sinker was still there. The heavy-duty leader was still there. The hook was gone. It wasn't broken. It wasn't snapped. It was unbent. The solid steel circle hook, thick as my pinky finger, had been opened up. It was as straight as a nail, straightened, as if a giant hand had simply untied it. I sat there for a long time, watching the sun begin its slow slide into the afternoon. I didn't make another cast. I pulled my anchor, started the engine, and headed for port. The engine sounded wrong, too loud in the sudden quiet. When I got back to the dock, my friend Jerry was there, mending a trap. "How'd you do, Earl?" he shouted. I tied off the boat, my hands fumbling with the simple knot. "You won't believe me," I said. "Try me," he said, not looking up. "I hooked a fish so big," I said, my voice feeling raspy. "It pulled my boat for 3 miles. Then it turned around and pushed me back." Jerry stopped mending. He looked at me. He looked at the mangled brass rod holder on my deck. He looked at my face. Then he let out a long, slow whistle. "That's one hell of a Lorota, Earl." "Yeah," I said, grabbing my thermos. "A Lorota." I kept the straightened hook. I've got it hanging over my fireplace. It's a reminder. It's a reminder that we're floating on 3/4 of the planet, and we've only seen the top inch of it. We are guests here, and sometimes the landlord comes by to let you know your lease is up. Hey, folks, thanks for listening to this old man's tale. Where are you listening from tonight? Let me know in the comments down below. It does an old man good to know who's on the other end of these stories. And if you haven't yet, please do hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost a thing. I never went back to that spot. I fish shallower waters now. I'm happy with mackerel. I've learned that there are some doors you just don't knock on. And there are some fish you're better off not catching. Because sometimes you're not the fisherman. You're the bait. The sea is a hard place, but it's fair play. It has a long memory. It remembers the dinosaurs, and it remembers the first ship. And that day, it remembered me. It looked me right in the eye and told me a secret. It said, "You are small." And I said, "Yes, sir, I am." And that, I think, is the most important lesson any man can ever learn. The main lesson from this story is that the ocean is more than just water. It's an ancient, living power. Humility is the greatest tool a fisherman has because we are only guests on its surface, and we never truly know what mysteries we're tethered to. Thanks again for pulling up a chair with me. If you enjoyed the story, I'd be mighty grateful if you'd click that like button and subscribe to the channel. It lets me know you're out there.